Well, hello and welcome to the Tour De Boudica, presented by the Warrior Games and brought to you here on Zwift Community Live for all of the racing action. I'm Kate Bates. I'm joined today by Anna Russel. And Anna, we've got an exciting couple of days ahead.
Yeah, we do. This is we had the first stage part one of the individual time trial earlier today. This is part two of stage one, and it was very fast, furious racing. So we're in for another great race right now. It's looks like the fast ones take about 25 minutes, but this is only stage one. You've got stages 2 and 3 over the next couple of days, and I'm super impressed by women's racing on Zwift. This has just been unbelievable.
Well, it is unreal. Let's take a look at what we have ahead for stage one here. And of course, nearly 600 entries across the tour, which is just incredible for the women's tour. So let's take a little bit of a look at what action lays out on course for us today.
The Warrior Games presents to you the Tour De Boudica 2.0. If you were involved in the first Tour De Boudica, you will know that we have a fun-filled weekend of racing in store for you. However, Tour De Boudica 2.0 has some twists. We have an individual general classification, a team classification, and time deduction bonuses. This weekend, all categories will race exactly the same routes and distances with a time trial, a sprint race, and a queen stage. Kicking off this evening, we have the individual time trial. This will be one lap of Tempest Fugitive. The total course distance is 19.2 kilometers or 11.9 miles. This includes a 2.4 kilometer or 1.5 mile lead-in. Our riders will fly through the desert. This will be fast and furious, and they must watch out for those false flats. First, they will pass the cliff dwellings near the first turnaround loop, and then hit the forward sprint segment. They will ride through the old desert flats, through a gap in the rocks to a hidden oasis, complete with a waterfall and dinosaur fossils. They will continue on and ride into Saddle Springs, where they will make a turnaround before heading back. Just after the turnaround, they will cross the start line of the 7 km Fugo Flats reverse segment. This ends at the same rock arch where the forward sprint ends. They will ride through the arch and to the first turnaround loop, then finish the route with a second effort on that sprint segment. Queen Bee of Stage 1 will be the fastest rider in each category. General classification after Stage 1. The individual general classification will be the rider's time from Stage 1. The team general classification will be the cumulative time of the two best placed riders in the team from Stage 1.
All right, well, some pretty exciting action coming up. Anna, I've got to say, normally when you're listening to a course profile, you hear more about the chateaus than you do about the dinosaur fossils. But that's something cool about Zwift, isn't it? That they've created these incredible worlds for everybody to race through.
Yeah, and this is a great one, especially for time trialing. I mean, we see a lot of races on this Tempest Fugit course, but it's just kind of perfect. You have such a huge view out in front of you of the riders ahead. And what we saw earlier today was people just sort of using them as little carrots and really going after it. Not much of a hill to speak of, but some beautiful scenery around the desert. I personally like this one. Yeah.
Well, it's just shy of 20 kilometres, and they are covering it based on this morning, well less than 30 minutes. So we know that that's clipping along pretty quickly. Let's take a bit of a look at the contenders for this weekend. So again, today is only stage 1 of 3. In the A plus and the A, we've got 5 different categories across this tour. Kristen Kolczynski, she is a hot one to watch from the US. Kate Robinson, Socks for Watts. Catherine Curry, we know that name well in women's cycling. Liz L. Shoup, Marlon Kargstrom, Helen Talbot, Helen McKay, Sunny from Betty Squad. She actually won the time trial in the fastest time this morning, so she is the one to watch. And Jackie Godby, the professional triathlete, she's certainly one to watch as well. Anna, what have we got up in the Bs?
Yeah, so the B category, Laura Lawson from AO, Molly Van Hoeweling from Dutch Diesel Cycling, Silja Holmsen from Draft, Helen Talbot from Socks for Watts, and Alison Thompson rounding it out from Cryogen as a rider to watch in the B category.
It's so encouraging to see all these teams entering. In the CCAT, we want to look at Tanya Appen, Christine Culver, who's been a regular on the WTRL Zwift Community League there. Jenny Asplund from the Swedish Zwifters. Novensko Betty Squad. Betty Squad has a couple of strong teams across the categories. And Karen van der Racht is another one to keep an eye on.
And looking at the DCAT, Ness Hilden from AO, Molly Kripe from Revo, Puck Linda Engstrom from Swedish Zwifters, Heather Kovacs from Vixen, and Anne-Katrin Pedersen rounding out that D category from Vikings.
So, look, I think what's interesting is it's very rare that all of these categories would be able to race essentially an international race, an international field, because we're seeing races, a lot of Australians racing, a lot of US riders. We've got some Swedish teams entered as well. Anna, it's really unusual that you would be able to get this kind of international field together across 5 different grades. And I think we do really need to give, at the very beginning of this whole tour, a very big shout out to all the teams that have made an effort to get involved in this, because with over 600 riders, we really are building quite a massive community in here, aren't we?
Oh, I just love it. And I think, there are people out there I saw that I used to race in my professional triathlon days, and they're out there like they are legit time trialists and they were just blowing up the field. But you've also got, what's special with the sort of individual time trial format, as you'll see, is that all the riders are basically out there together. So you can be an A plus rider, but then you're off sort of riding with the C's and the D's, and it's just super inspirational. So yeah, I'm loving the way they've done this, having the individual time trial first. Being a sort of triathlete myself, what I like about it is that you can't hide in a pack. You can't sort of push a good power up. Like, this is just who can get in that pain cave and who can push out the most watts for 25 minutes, essentially.
This is pretty much your jam, right? Individual time trials for triathletes. I think we'll actually see a lot of triathletes really come to the fore today, which might make the racing a bit more hard fought in the next couple of days as the kind of traditional cyclists, if you will, bearing in mind we're on an esport virtual platform here. Maybe the more traditional cyclists will have a chance to catch up.
Yeah, we'll see how this sort of pans out. I've just seen that a few of the riders are now out on course, and we're just seeing, should we pop down and see who's sort of around at the moment? It looks like I've got, might be Paige Bolt here from Finesse Wahoo, who are...
Yeah, so let's take a look at that. And also massive shout out to you, Anna, because we have an all female production crew and commentary crew here for the women's tour, and that's one of the first times I've experienced that in my media career. So that's pretty exciting, the access that it gives women across the sport all together. So the Tour De Boudica, it's in its 2nd year running now. Last year, 2020 in June, they had their first, which was a welcome insert of racing in what was, of course, the height of the pandemic. And I thought that in 2021 we wouldn't be saying that anymore, Anna, but that's not quite right. A lot of people in lockdown and turning to Zwift to keep them going and keep part of the community.
Exactly. I did just want to touch a little bit on bike selection in the racing today. You can see here Paige Bolt here, this Finesse Wahoo rider. They've gone with the full, I think it's the Specialized Aero bike. We'll see if we can get a close-up on that. But it's it is all about bike selection today as well, because I think what people who may not be new to Zwift, they might pick a bit of a standard setup, and today, because it's so flat, you can just eke out quite a few seconds, which will make the difference over this longer weekend. And she's definitely picked a good setup. We can just see maybe she doesn't have the points for that deep dish wheel, which would make a big difference today as well.
So that's something to touch on as well, is no matter what your ideal setup is, Anna, you actually have to earn it in game, right? So it does depend how many hours you've spent in game as to what level you are. And make sure we don't get confused about whether A+ to D category actually says anything about how much time they've spent in game.
Exactly.
Their categories are about how much power they actually put out. So the riders who are professional riders, and we do have quite a lot represented in that A and A+ category, both triathletes and road cyclists and track cyclists alike, they will often not have the best gear, because while they put out the what's required. They haven't spent all that time. So what we're also seeing here, Anna, by way of explanation, is the approaching starting line. That's because there's a lead in. Is that right? There's a lead in to this time trial. So at this point, they're kind of just winding up.
It's actually a little bit of a sort of twist with the individual time trial. When I go in to watch these riders here, what's happened is my little avatar, who's part of the production, is approaching the start line. But you'll see that for the entire race today. They're all still out on course. They're racing, but because my avatar, who's just watching the race, is still sitting in the start line, that's why we're going to see that during the race. So just like a little tweak we see here with this individual time trial format. But as you'll know, when we go through to the scratch racing in the next 2 stages, it'll be back to that sort of normal watching everyone and seeing all those power numbers.
It's actually incredible the amount of data that comes through Zwift Power. So for anybody who's watching and tuning into the broadcast, it's also really good to go into Zwift Power. If you're watching live, you might get some live numbers there. If you're watching retrospectively, then you can also jump in and see what some of those results are. So I'll also touch on, Anna, on the left of screen, we have Fuego Flats, which is this segment in here. And a lot of the riders will have a bracket behind their name, and that indicates their team. So the BRT will be their team. So they have their name, Doris Marr, at the top of the chart there. And if we just flip over to the right a little bit and we go all the way over and we see all those dots out on course, they all represent riders. So we can see how many riders are actually out on course. You mentioned in the opener that they have something to chase. I mean, this is quite remarkable. They really do have quite a number of riders in front of them to kind of pursue through this course, don't they?
Exactly, and we are sitting here watching Yvonne Timewell, and I do want to note, I'm looking at her bike, and I do believe, I'm just quickly having a look, that she was one of the Zwift Triathlon Academy winners from a couple of years back, and went and raced over at Kona under the sort of Zwift sponsorship from winning that competition. So she's an extremely good time trialist, and what I'm finding very interesting is we saw someone just go through and past her, which was, I believe, Jackie Godby has actually managed to put some time in her already. So we'll see. There we go. So we can see Jackie Godby here, and she races for Sarah's Pros Closet. Interesting here, a new pickup for Sarah's Pros Closet. Used to race for Vision e-racing, and this is her first race for her new team. And this is a great pickup from this team because you can just see her blitzing by the competition, and check out those watts per kg, 5.5 watts per kg. That's why she managed to absolutely blow past those other riders.
Well, she's a bit of an overachiever, old Jackie Godby. She's in medical school. She's a professional triathlete. She's taken very well to the world of e-racing. I really think that she's one of the climbers through this. I think we really should mark her name down for some future years to come. I mean, you know what's interesting, Anna, is watching on screen. If you were watching IRL, you kind of get the rock and roll, and you can see from looking at them how they may be performing. But sometimes you can be wrong because some people are super smooth on their bikes, others just move all around the shop. This is like a little bit more pure, I think. We just see the raw data and we see the numbers that they're putting out. Jackie Godby would be able to see those riders up ahead of her, and something a bit to chase. And not dissimilar to triathlon, you can't really draft. So let's talk about etiquette in time trials and when you catch someone, because Anna, you're also a Zwift racer. So if you catch a rider in an individual time trial, what's etiquette when you're passing them?
Yeah, so in a triathlon sense, the etiquette is it's the responsibility of the past rider to drop back, but because there's no draft turned on in the individual time trial in-game in Zwift, they can't actually jump onto your draft anyway. So it's a bit different to a team time trial that we also commentate on Zwift. that has drafting enabled, because obviously you need to draft off your teammates. So there's a lot more etiquette involved there, because people do get a benefit jumping on the back. But in this case, you can't actually get on the wheel. So the best they could do is try and hold on and pace off that rider. But they've actually got to hold very high watts. If you're going to pace off Jackie Godby here, you're going to need to hold the same watts, because you're not going to get any draft benefit. So that's what's interesting about this individual time trial format here in Zwift, a little bit different to that team time trial.
Yeah, well, and I also think there's a few mind games that go on in the Zwift world too. So while they may not get a draft benefit, can you imagine when you're out there and a rider comes up and just kind of sits behind you? I feel like it might annoy you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw, Jackie and Yvonne were quite close together. And I do think that could have been a little bit of mind games on the part of Jackie Godby. She went by her a lot quicker than she went by some of the other riders. So I think she just went by and was like, boom, you're gone. And that just was definitely playing some mind games. I do want to call out Jennifer Hodge here on the screen at the moment. She's racing for Fearless, and she is a huge organizer for that team. And she just does a great job organizing them in the WTRL team time trials that happen each week for Fearless. So a little bit of a shout out to her on that S-Works racing here in the C category.
So we had a whole heap of the riders go off together, and to make sure everybody understands, we've had two different tranches of these individual time trials across two slightly different time zones. But when it comes to the next stages, stage 2 and stage 3, they will all be racing together. Now, the general classification is on time, and a lot of Zwift racers will be used to it actually being on points, but it is on time. And that's where this individual time trial, Anna, it counts so much. It could absolutely be the decider overall. Every single second counts, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I look at what happened this morning, and you've got Rachel Lieberman won it, and she is you're looking at 45 seconds. 7th place is 45 seconds behind her. So how do you gain 45 seconds on a rider? So I think what we'll see coming out of today is all these teams getting together, and they're going to have to think of what team tactics they're going to have for tomorrow. And that's what's going to make this super exciting, because you can't just go in tomorrow and be like, oh, okay, we'll just stay in the front bunch and do as well as we can at the end. If you're wanting to get higher up the placings and your team to get higher up, you actually have to go in with some strategy. Those teams that don't go in with strategy, they're too far behind now.
Well, and we're watching Kovacs at the moment and overtake there. We can see on the right-hand side, we can see who we're following because we have the blue highlight on it. It's a bit of a guide on how to watch. And the group riders nearby, that's the riders who may be in front. We can see Poulos and Despas are in front of Kovacs, Rodriguez and Horsey are behind, but we're about to see another overtake here. It's interesting to consider a non-time trial rider, Anna. So some of the riders out there today will know that they don't necessarily have the chance to win in the overall sense in the GC classification and also in this individual time trial. So those strategies you were talking about, the strategy might be to go pretty easy in the time trial, use it as a bit of a heart and lung opener, but then go for stage wins, because, I mean, most of us would have watched the Tour de France at some stage, and that's essentially what this tour is. It's a short version of the Tour de France where every second goes to your overall, and in the stages come, we also have time bonuses. So it will be interesting in the wash of all of this, to see which riders have very clearly just kind of ticked along in this individual time trial.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite brutal, I think, this format of racing for those people who don't really have the individual time trial chops. But if you look, like you said, at a Tour de France type event, and I was actually, I didn't get the whiteboard out, but I was chatting about it in the park with my husband earlier.
You and your whiteboard. I'm very surprised you don't have the whiteboard out, to be honest.
Oh, I know.
You dropped your game in the new year.
I know. But I think you've got to approach this as a team. So those riders who are very, very good at this time trial format, they need to push themselves today and get into that individual GC. Now, the ones who aren't so good at time trialing, they can just go out today and ride a race. Like, they don't need to go crazy, and then they need to be used strategically in the following days. I mean, you don't see someone like Groenewegen or Caleb Ewan out trying to dominate an individual time trial. They are there for a reason. They're sprinters, and I think when people build their teams, they need to start thinking of this as well. I did just the reason I highlighted Heather Kovac here was that we do have a little bit of a bio on her. She has actually started with playing soccer and then went into distance running. But after an IT band injury from running half marathons, which is so common that a lot of these Zwifters are ex-injured runners, she went on to Zwift and just became addicted, joined Velocity Vixens. She's from Ohio, so she's got a pretty brutal winter ahead of her. And just stoked to get to some good competitive racing in 2021.
Well, isn't it interesting to consider the backgrounds and the pathways to elite sport? Because Remco Evenepoel, one of the biggest up-and-coming talents in the sport of cycling, he also came from soccer. And I think traditionally, Anna, we look at some sports as being feeder sports to cycling. But I think that Zwift, I would put it out there that Zwift challenges that, and that anybody with any kind of lung capacity who wants to have a go, this is kind of their safe place in the world for them, because they don't need to worry too much about the skill side of stuff. It's far more about the athletic ability. I think it provides, opportunities for athletes that we may otherwise never get to see.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of bios from athletes that are on Zwift. And I read through them, and it's just so intriguing. I mean, you've got ex-triathletes, ex-runners, ex-crossfitters. A group that seems to do really well is the ex-rowers. They seem to be extremely good at definitely this type of format. Another interesting thing to sort of highlight here with this individual time trial is we're watching Catherine Monks here from Finesse Rockets. I've raced her a lot over the Zwift Racing League. She's a very dominant athlete. Is this stage, your watts per kg are almost meaningless because it's so flat and there's no drafting. It really just is your raw watts and how much you can put out. I talked to a couple of riders after the racing this morning, and it was interesting to see that and hear from them that the biggest thing they said for a good performance was good pacing. So those who went out too hard just ended up fading away at the end and sort of hemorrhage time. Like we see in the team time trials, you really got to pace yourself, start off easier. I would say with a 25-ish K race, you'd want to break it down into 5-kilometer chunks, start off a bit easier, and then each 5K really build up and have your strongest 5K at the end. Those riders seem to have done the best.
Oh, I love a good discussion on time trial tactics, because from the outside, you could kind of think that somebody coming into the sport might say to a coach, tell me how to race this. But there are a lot of different styles, and it does really depend on the kind of rider you are. It's quite a skill to be able to get yourself to threshold power and to push it and finish completely exhausted. And a lot of people, when they're learning to ride time trials, there's often quite an impressive mushroom cloud, an explosion that happens 5 kilometers from the end, because they've gotten to threshold, they've pushed it a little bit and thought, I can do this. It doesn't always end up like that. And I think time trials are pretty brutal. They are really, really tough, because what you need to do is go out there, get to a point where you're uncomfortable, and then push a little bit further. And so there is really an art, isn't there, Anna, in being able to be at that limit but not tip over that precipice into exploding where your body can't recover. So it is a very good tactic to look, perhaps you can look for the first half of the race, break it down, as you said, and for the first 2 5-kilometer splits, you ride to a power. And your powers pretty well when you're on Zwift, because you see it on the screen constantly. So you ride to a power. You don't even worry too much about your heart rate or how you're feeling. You just kind of ride to a power. And then the next 5K, you see if you can increase that. And the last 5K is you need to be at the limit the whole time. So it's interesting retrospectively to look back and break down their races and how they have approached it from a power perspective. But you're right, this is a dead flat course. It's not so much about watts per kilo. It's just about pure watts. and what
Exactly.
the riders can put out. So I think we might see some of the riders coming to the fore today who then might be really challenged in the Queen's stage when it's a lot more about watts per kg. And that is what's really cool about the way this tour has been designed, is that third stage, that'll be on for young and old, because that's where these people who have taken an early lead, that's where the climbers kind of get their opportunity to claw it back. So I applaud the Warrior Games crew who've put this together, because they've done a really good job of making sure that it's an interesting race as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's something for everybody, and I love the team dynamic side of it. We're looking here at Alison Thompson racing for Cryogen in Category B. So we're talking about different sports people come from. She came off as a competitive swimmer and raced in long distance events in the pool in Minnesota. Then went to open water races in North Carolina, and seems to have done a whole lot of swimming, and then has ended up joining Cryogen and getting involved in the team time trial races. And she said the biggest thing she's looking forward to is just supporting her teammates and giving herself a bit of a good challenge. She's never done a multi-day stage race before. So this won't be the only person who is like that in this racing.
And so it is important that the riders take note of the backup factor. You know, they need to make sure that they hydrate properly and refuel properly, because it's a bit different racing one day alone versus racing 3 days in a row.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I did just see that some of the times are coming through into Zwift Power. Looks like Paige Bolt from the Finesse Rockets, Wahoo Finesse Rockets, is doing a very good race, averaging 307 watts. But Jackie Godby averaging 363 watts so far after 13 kilometers. That's unreal.
Isn't that mindful? I mean, that's just a really solid and fast effort. And Jackie Godby, I mean, look at those watts per kilo. Yes, we say they don't matter so much, but she's sitting on 5.5, 5.6 watts per kilo consistently. So that is something to look at and go, okay, hold on here. This is, excessively good. Anything over kind of 4, anything over 4 is very impressive. Anything over 4.5 is getting into, really pro territory. And I think anything over 5 is kind of watch out, because I think she's really stamped her mark.
Yeah, I mean, stamped her mark. Understatement maybe. We're looking at the top ride from earlier today was Rachel Lieberman. She averaged 309 watts and did 25:33. I mean, 363 watts. I'm just astounded. That is unreal. I mean, I know she's extremely good, but this is going to blow the competition out of the water, I think. So we're following her right now. She's obviously a very high level Zwifter. She's got that flashy disc wheel, which I know because I'm trying to get it before the Zwift Racing League starts. It is a hard wheel to get. I think you've got to be level 42 or 43, and even after doing the Festive 500, I'm still not close to getting that wheel. So kudos to her for being an extremely high level Zwifter, and she's approaching 15 kilometers now, so not too long to go. And I mean, unless she's completely blowing her pacing strategy, she's looking for pretty hot for a win here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'm surprised you don't have your whiteboard out to get yourself a strategy to get that disc wheel, Anna. So get onto that. The interesting from this morning was Antonina Reznikov. Now, she averaged also 5.5 watts per kilo for the time trial, but because she is a lightweight, and that is by weight, not by attitude, that was just over 300 watts normalised power. What we're looking at with Godby is a whole lot higher. So even though the watts per kilo is similar, that overall time. Now, what's going to be interesting, because it's really setting up for a bit of a Ripper Queen stage here, is if a rider like Reznikov might be a minute behind in this time trial, but given that they've got similar watts per kg, when that road turns upwards on the Queen stage, that's where Godby, I think today is almost going to be her easiest day. She'll have to really sit down overnight and consider what she does to maintain the lead that I think she's building right now, because this is just an incredible ride so far.
Yeah, and this is where the team support comes into place. If she's got a big lead and potentially she's not as strong on the climbs, being a sort of a triathlon time trialist specialist, then you need to get your team in to help. You've got the team GC, top 2 placed riders is how well the team stacks up. Individual GC, she can go for the individual GC, but she's going to need some help. And I think that's what's so cool about 3-day team and individual stage racing is you just really can't only ride for yourself. You need either the team support or you need to support an individual, which makes it a really a nice sort of feeling amongst all the women here, right? They've all got to support or be supported.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I think it's creating a far broader community than just solo riders. Anna, we have to mention you do race for Sarah, so you might have a bit of a interest in what happens here. But Rachel Lieberman this morning, she's riding for 2024, which, of course, is one of the teams out of America that's guided by Kristen Armstrong, the multiple Olympic gold medalist in this event, no less, and Nicola Cranmer, who have shepherded a whole heap of incredible athletes over the years. So it's a very good team to be part of. But they have turned to e-racing with a specific squad for that. Now, Rachel Lieberman, her time this morning was 25:33. Pause and process that for a second. 25:33 for 19.7 kilometres. Boom, that is absolutely flying along. Jackie Godby, her estimated time of arrival, 25:33.
Oh,
so how is that for a race? So somebody get in Jackie Godby's ear and give her a bit of an extra push, because it really will come down to the line here.
Oh, that's exciting. That's going to be a great one. And yes, caveat, I do race for the Sarasa Pros Closet team, and I am aware of what tactics they will be following this weekend. So I'm desperately reminding myself to keep my mouth shut on what some of those tactics are.
Okay, and I'm now desperately reminding myself to try and get that out of you without you realising.
We are following one of the Betty Squad racing team members at the moment from Category D. The reason I wanted to highlight this team is everyone knows from my commentary that I love a good kit and a good little setup, and I'm just really digging this Betty Squad kit. I do have some of this in real life, actually. I've got some socks, which just look amazing. It's kind of like a skull and crossbones, but instead of the crossbones, it's a little butterfly. You can just see there. And I just love it. I just think it looks so rad.
I feel like you've given away a bit of your personality there with the old love of a skull crossbone butterfly combination there. How good is it, though, when you can buy kit in real life that you kind of drool over on Zwift? I think that's really cool when you can look at it and go, oh, that's fabulous, and then actually go out and get it for yourself.
Oh, it's amazing. I love it. So, yeah, a little shout out there to Betty Squad. I know that originally they came from a sort of triathlon pedigree. I'm not sure if all the people racing for it are triathletes, but they'll love this course to open it up with if they are all triathletes, even in this D category. So, yeah, Kelly here riding pretty good, 2.5 watts per kg, about 13k in. So, over the halfway mark, which is good.
Yeah, keep it going, Kelly. And the Betty Squad, they've got teams in a couple of different categories. Sunny, the German rider, she won the A category. So we have, of course, A+, which where Jackie Godby is in, and then the A category. And Sunny won that this morning, that time trial, 27:13 she came across in. Of the lot that are out on course at the moment, Doris Ma is up there, as well as Esther Walker, but they don't look like they will better that time at this stage that Sunny did. So the Betty Squad have off to a great start so far. We do have 5 different categories of racing, which is an added category from last year. So, Anna, we only had A through D last year, but this time we've also got A+.
Yeah, so all of the riders racing for Category E are actually racing the A+ category, and these are basically what you'd call the professional Zwifters, those who race for elite teams on Zwift, sort of the cream of the crop. So Category E is our A+ category. This is Novinsko, who's racing for Betty Designs as well, and she's a stay-at-home mum living in California and also MT. I think that's Massachusetts for our American viewers. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, she likes riding outside, but during the winter, obviously gets onto Zwift and loves just being part of a team. Loves the team culture. She said, one sprint race in, I almost puked, and then I knew I was hooked.
I love any quote that includes puked and is actually like a genuine quote. I think that's a ripper.
Yeah, that was awesome. So there we go. I wonder how she's feeling right now as we're seeing a little pass there. It looks like C. Bradley, our A-plus vision rider, just came by. You can just see, and that's what I like about all of these guys sort of racing together. You can just see that difference in that 4.5 watts per kg versus, a 2.5. It is a significant difference when you look at them riding next to each other.
And Carrie Bradley is moving pretty quick. So when you were saying, Anna, that it's E, if we look to the bottom right of screen, right next to their name, they will have a little letter, and that does denote the category they're in. E on screen will equal the A+ category. And if you go into Zwift Power to take a look, you also need to click on the E at the top in order to find those riders. So a little bit of a quirk, but we can figure this out. A+ equals E. That sounds like a kind of algebra my 3-year-old would do.
And
anyway.
It looks as though, just looking at Yvonne Timel here, who we were following earlier, she's just coming up to around 20k. So she's nearing the finish line now. So she's had a solid day, still riding about 4.8 and up to 6 now. So she's really pushing that power coming to the end. I think she's paced that very, very well.
Well, we have talked about pacing. What they don't show us delightfully in Zwift is, at that end of ride where you're heaving over your bike, or the riders who haven't paced quite properly and are starting to pedal squares toward the end of the race. The avatars keep it well together, which is quite good. If we look at the riders that are coming in and their times, I think that this morning has set a bit of a benchmark for what may happen overall. Again, the results this morning, especially with Rachel Lieberman going through in 25:33. We can't get it on screen just yet, but if we just take a look at what's happening over with Jackie Godby, she has finished, ready for this, Anna? Mm-hmm. In 25:20. So she has ramped it up in that last 5 kilometres. Maybe she was listening. Come on, Jackie, go you good thing. And she has taken 13 seconds off Rachel Lieberman's time.
Wow.
So massive shout out to Jackie Godby there, because she has really thrown the gauntlet down. Next today has been Alana Brady. Now, we will in tomorrow's broadcast be able to update you on all the results on screen. We'll have that up, but of course we need to verify all of the results before we can do that. So let's call it provisional results so far. Jackie Godby will head into tomorrow's stage with about a 13-second lead in that A+ category.
Yeah, it looks like Esther Walker may have taken out the A category with Doris Marr and Laura Fideo from TBR coming in third. Again, these are just preliminary results. It's just what we're looking at from Zwift Power. This is only for today, this part of today's race. So the event team will pull together, this part and the part that happened earlier today, and then rank everyone and give them what their individual GC and how the team's looking. But that was we can say right now that Jackie definitely set the fastest time of stage 1. So congrats to her. That was mightily impressive.
Now, over in the B Cat, Molly Van Houweling has gone through the fastest there today. Now, I need somebody watching to verify that this is the same Molly Van Houweling that took the hour record back in 2015, I think it was. She was super impressive in 2015. She went after that hour record, and she rode just over 46.2 k an hour, I think it is. But if somebody can please confirm that it's her, because I'm pretty excited to see her out racing on Zwift. If it is her, she's a legal scholar at Stanford. She's, again, one of these overachievers. Wow. Anna, I feel like we've kind of got a whole bunch of overachievers here. It's pretty impressive.
Well, it's kind of one part inspiring and one part depressing when can I say that, when I read the bios and it's like, ex professional something doing this and a surgeon. Like,
yeah,
okay,
it's
wow.
impressive. I mean, we both have young kids, so I think we read these bios and we really hope that this is what our children turn into. It gives them something to aspire to. I think I've probably done my dash with being able to go to law school or medical school, but hey, never say never. So stay tuned for that. If we look over at C, the riders are still coming in. There we haven't quite finished in the C and the D cats, but it looks like so far Jackie Godby has taken that fastest time, not just in this session this afternoon, but also this morning. And also very honourable mention to Alana Brady, who has put in a good time. She's finished on 25:47. Which puts her not too far behind this morning's performances from Lieberman in around the same time as Reznikov. So Catherine Curry also sitting there on 25:41. So already we've got about 6 riders within 30 seconds of each other leading into stage 2. I think we're going to get a lot of really exciting racing, because it's also good to note that they're from different teams. Team 2024 with Lieberman and Reznikov are probably the ones in the box seat at the moment. So if we're looking at the pictures and we're looking at the DCAT riders here who are coming in, and they're all doing
we're just sort of rounding out the last riders coming in now. So the whole race, just over 19 kilometres, and these guys have got about 3K to go. So it's another Betty Squad racing team here. Looks like there's big gaps between the riders. So they've just sort of different to what we saw earlier, where there are definitely bunches pacing off each other. This ride has been, man, like pretty brutal, just alone out there in the desert with you and your Watts, and a lot of self-talk going on, I'd imagine.
your Watts, and a whole lot of self-talk. So we have had some finishes in that D category so far. Elizabeth Kemerick sits on top. Interesting not only to consider the individual results, but Sophia Westberg and Puck Engstrom, and we talked about her early on in the show as one to watch in this category. They are both from SZ. So Kemerick and Hildson, they finished this afternoon in this session in first and fourth, and they're from the same team. Second and third, they're also from the same team. So some interesting team dynamics are playing out, but it looks to me like, contrary to what we kind of pontificated earlier, that there aren't any riders who have taken a holiday on this ride, but it's been pretty solid effort all around.
Yeah, I just highlighted this rider here from Rave. I've just never heard of this team Rave before, so I'd be keen for anyone who's watching or can message me later. I'd like to know a bit more about this team. I just haven't seen them. They've got a cool kit going on though, and I kind of like how they're looking, as I always do when people are dressed well. I mean, it's a pretty stylish kit. I like it. So she's got a lot of ride-ons too, sitting there in her back pocket, you can see. And yeah, Rave, where are they from? She's riding from America, obviously, but always like to get the origin story about who these teams are and who's riding for them, why they're doing this. Be cool. Let us know, anyone from Rave.
So Nicola Cranmer's just jumped in on YouTube. I love YouTube. Thanks, guys, for helping me out here. And both Catherine Curry and Nicola Cranmer have said, yes, it is the same Molly Van Howling. So we're kind of in the presence of royalty here.
Wow.
I mean, I think Nicola Cranmer and Catherine Curry have their own place in cycling royalty themselves. But she's also the Masters World Time Trial Champion. So probably no surprises that she's performed so well out there today. Isn't it incredible, just the calibre of rider that we're having turn up to this racing across all of the categories? It really is very, very impressive. What I think we should do, Anna, is we'll put some email addresses in on that YouTube link, and we encourage anybody to send us some bios across all the teams. You want to know a bit more information about Rave, we would love to know about your riders, what got them going, what they love, what they hate about Zwift. And I think, what was the word you used before? Vomiting, puking?
Yeah.
something like that. Maybe that's a love or a hate. I'm not sure. Where does that go?
Exactly. And I think, yeah, I love those kind of stories where they've got a bit of personality to them. It makes it, sometimes you're watching an avatar on screen and it's just a sort of stone-faced little computer person, but you hear something like that behind the scenes and you realize, oh, okay, this is like hard work. Their avatar may have not moved that whole time, but this person is, jumping off their trainer, lying in a puddle of sweat. So tell us some more about those kind of stories. I like that stuff.
Yeah, or tag us in on Instagram with your live photos because they're pretty funny too. So, Anna, we'll get the live results from today in tomorrow's show, or at the top of the show, we'll be able to go through those lists and really dissect what happened today. A pretty good start. I mean, pretty incredible performances. I think Jackie Godby will have a big target on her back, but I think 2024, from a team perspective, the Saris... their strategy and tactics. I'll try and get that out of you tomorrow. But I think that they really will have to go back and think, well, we're incumbent at the moment, but 2024 with Lieberman and Reznikov, they're kind of coming for them.
Yeah, and I mean, it will be good tomorrow. We'll start the show with just looking at how it all played out today once everyone's been put together and ranked. But across all categories, there's just going to be little battles and little sort of digs going on. If someone didn't feel they had a good day today, I'm sure they're going to just sacrifice themselves for the team tomorrow. So we're going to see fireworks. I'll tell you that. Like, tomorrow's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, so tomorrow we have the Seaside Sprint. It is 34.5 kilometres worth of racing after the lead-in. Within that, we have 5 sprints. And, Anna, they come with bonus points. So what happens with a bonus point? It's 5, 3, 2, 1 for the first 4 across the line. That time bonus all gets added up and taken off your overall title. So even though Godby may go in with a sizable lead for the moment, it doesn't mean that tomorrow that can't get whittled back simply in time bonuses.
Exactly. I mean, tomorrow I think it's actually the fastest segment time.
Right.
That's what makes it.
Yeah.
That's what makes it interesting to me, is because you could play a really good team strategy there. I won't go into it in any greater detail than that, but you can really go for those segment times and not particularly be going for GC. So I think there'll be some interesting stuff happening that may not be actually in the front pack tomorrow. So, yeah, good luck to the teams. Hope they got a good sleep tonight and rest up and recover, because it's not going to be easy over the next couple of days.
Well, that's it. And the segment time, it makes it very interesting. We can dissect all of that tomorrow as well. Of course, thank you to everybody who tuned in both live and afterwards, whatever time zone suited you. Anna, a massive shout out to you for the production side of this. It's pretty exciting to have an all-chick production team on this one. I've got to say, I love that, and I love the opportunities that Zwift offers both for the racers and everyone else around. So thank you very much for your hard work. And here's looking forward to a couple of very exciting days ahead. So please join us tomorrow. It is a bit of a different time zone. So for anybody tuning in today, make sure you do check that Zwift to make sure that you jump on line to catch it live. Thank you very much, Anna, and we will see you tomorrow for stage 2 of the Tour of Boudica.
Awesome. See you, Katie.